Go.
Okay, good morning from Calgary, Canada. This is Dr. Hira Burhan, President of the Asian Medical Students and Residents Society for Neurosurgery. As a part of the social media and disseminations group, we have been proud to organize this GNOS, which is the Global Neurotrauma Outcome Study update webinar. Today, we are proud to have been with the presence of esteemed honorary members of the study. We have Professor Franco Servadar with us. He is the current president of the WFNS, which is the World Federation of Neurosurgical Societies. He will be giving us an introduction about the GNOS, and further we have other honorary members, including the principal investigator, Professor Peter Hutchison, Dr. David Clark, and other participating members who will share their experiences and perspectives on the study. This has to be an interactive webinar, unlike the other ones, in which we can have ideas and experiences and suggestions for GNOS. So we start with Professor Franco. Professor Franco, please start your talk.
Yeah.
He's the president of the World Federation of Neurosurgical Societies, and we are very thankful to him for his time and presence.
Okay. Can you see my presentation now?
No, you need to share your screen.
Yeah. Go back.
Where is he at? I can't see.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. I press share.
Yes.
Share. Okay. That's
yes.
Okay. It's
That's
okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Harry, for the invitation, and thank you for the work you are doing, John Bennett. It's tremendous work for us, for all of us, and it's really in favor of the neurosurgeon all over the world. I will not entirely speak in my brief introduction about only about the NIOS study, but also about where we are in the world for neurosurgery. I represent the World Federation, who is about 49,000, let's say, around 50,000 surgeons from 130 societies all over the world. The main mission is to improve neurosurgical care through training and research. And you know that we all know what's going on. In 2015, the Lancet wrote a milestone paper about global surgery. Until 2015, all the money for countries in development, or let's say low and middle income countries, were targeted to communicable disease and many others, infective disease, HIV, all of these kind of issues, because they thought that surgery was extremely expensive and not fitting for developing these countries. After this paper, it was identified that something like 5 billion people all over the world are in need of proper surgery and cannot get it, which is even more than that about infective and transmissible disease. So neurosurgery, actually, it's in part, or even in one important part of these new surgical efforts. We have 4 listed surgeries within the competence of the new global surgery, which are basically surgery for trauma, and surgery, both brain and spine trauma, and surgery for hydrocephalus. So we are part of this global effort to improve surgery in countries with low and middle income. If we look at the paper published, you can see it here. The word global neurosurgery was not there until 2016. Then, through the effort of many neurosurgeons like Key Park, Rousseau, and ourselves as well, the number of publications increased, and I am pleased to tell you that last year we had more than 25 publications targeted to global, what we call it, global neurosurgery. where is the disparity? The disparity is here. You see, this is the number of available neurosurgeons all around the world. And you see that Southeast Asia and Africa are in lack of a good number of neurosurgeons. This is the ranking of the neurosurgeon per population. On the extreme right, here you see Japan. Here you have USA, Brazil, and all Europe is somewhere situated here, whereas the poorest country are there with very limited number of neurosurgeons available, as you see. But even more important, this is a very important paper. It is about children, but it concerns all of us. These are the available instruments to do surgery in different areas of the world. And you see that in low income and low middle income countries, there is very little available instruments here. And only one part of the world, the high income country, have almost everything. I would say almost, because apart from United States, even Europe has some problems in some part of our work, like epilepsy and cerebrovascular surgery. So apart from the number of neurosurgeons, the number of available instruments varies a lot among different parts. Basically, there are two parts of the world. Our part, which is called the Western part, where we do have to play with these beautiful new microscopes, the exoscopes, or whatever you want. And another part of the world, these are two colleagues who are operating in Africa for charity in Benin, and they are using the telephone as a microscope. This has also been published recently by our colleagues in India. The same, the use of telephone for magnification. So, or you see it here, we have beautiful tools like O-arm, intraoperative CT scan, anything, HIRO, anything to use, to be used in trajectory for pedicle screws, like here, or in some parts of the world, we need steel frames and wires. So the approach to the same operation is very different in different parts of the world. I just escaped this, which is too complicated, but I ask you to read this paper and to see how big is the world of neurosurgery. These are 13 million of neurosurgical operations per year that we are doing all around the world, and you will be surprised to see how important are traumatic brain injury and traumatic spinal cord injury and even stroke as compared to what we think it's a common way of operating, like epilepsy surgery or brain tumors and so on. So just look at this paper to see how big is the world and how different is the world. Obviously, we need to improve this situation, but how can we do it? That's the issue. We are, as World Federation, we have founded a foundation who can support education of neurosurgeons all around the world. We have 3 programs. One is the full postgraduate training center, which means that the students, the doctors, can be trained for 5 years for the full period. Then we have what we call short period training center for 1 month to 6 months training all around the world. In Africa, we had quite a number of centers who can train African neurosurgeons in Africa with the help, economical help of the World Federation. And you see that together with many other centers and the efforts of many others programs and African neurosurgeons, the number of neurosurgeons was moved in sub-Saharan Africa from 1 to 8 million to 1 for 2 million in 2016, a 4 times increase in the number of neurosurgeons, which clearly are not enough yet, but they are improved. And another issue that we always forget is advocacy. We need the people to know about what we are doing. This is a paper published in Kenya about the first time where brain surgery was done in a peripheral hospital in Kenya. And this is a bridge between Bandung in Indonesia and New Guinea, where there is a new neurosurgical unit starting to operate. So we need to help our colleagues to start and work. So apart from that, we are organizing courses all around the world. This is an endoscopy course. These are 3D cinema lectures, very, very important new initiatives. This is a Congress on Neurotrauma where we have supported the participation of students from all over the world. This is a WFS symposium in Kenya, and these are the educational and training course that we are doing. I just go through very quickly. You see it here in Togo and everywhere. Another way of education is the one we are having now, today. It's the use of the web for education, which is extremely important in countries where going to a meeting or going to a course is, from the economical point of view, difficult to achieve. So we have recently published a full review together with our colleagues of BrainBook, a full review of what the digital teaching can be helpful to low and middle income countries. And as you have seen here, there are quite a lot in the web of this is the one where we are now, the neurosurgical TV, but there are many others tools that we can use from the web to improve the education of our young neurosurgeons. And the webinars that we have done through the World Federation, and this webinar is today, and the webinars organized by the Asian neurosurgery like today, from many of you, including Hypecherian and many others who are Professor Kato, who is the mother of all these issues. And I think this is extremely important. This is a simulator for the phone that we have organized in Europe together with the European community, and is freely available for all of you for neurosurgical simple approaches. There is a weakness that we all have to know about internet learning. Internet learning has no quality control in some sites. Whenever we see a surgical procedure, we have to be aware that in the internet there is no surgical approach curve. So remember that whenever you want to do a surgical approach, always remember a learning curve who is not there. And we need clearly a place where we have to display these kind of webinars and the web-based education approved. What we know is that, and I'm going to finish with my presentation, if we look at the numbers, for instance, of brain injury, we see that these are the most frequent brain injury in different countries. You see South America, Mexico, Africa, this part of Southeast Asia. These are the countries with more trauma, and these are the countries who are publishing about trauma. And you see that the world is reversed. What the part of the world who is publishing is the part of the world with less of this disease. And this is coming because from low and middle income countries, we only have something like 4.9% of everything is published. So less than 5% is published by a group of people, of countries, where we have about 40% of the world population. And if we look about what is published from these countries, you see that most is brain tumor. And brain tumor is not the top surgery that they are doing in terms of quantity. So it's also a reflection of what we want from them, and what is feasible to publish in our peer-reviewed papers. And these are the most publishing countries in the world, and you see that only India, who is low middle income countries, is among the first 15. So most of what is published is coming from United States, China, Japan, and Europe, most. And even more important, if we look at the most cited papers, so citation index, then we have a clear prevalence of the United States followed by Europe. So basically, if we look at the most cited papers, we have only two parts of the world, United States and Europe. What does it mean? That whenever we generate through evidence-based medicine guidelines for management of everything, this is the guidelines for high-income countries, you see that these evidence-based is generated only in one part of the world. So whenever we want to cure a patient in let's say in Sub-Saharan Africa, we have to cure it if we follow the guidelines according to guidelines who are generated in North America and Europe, where the situation is clearly, obviously, very much different. So the solutions are clearly, we have no intervention is possible without data. That's why INOS is so important. And no improvement is possible without the knowledge of the local facilities. And these are a number of papers published by European and American universities together with African neurosurgeons. And you see that this, one of these experience, the experience done in Uganda by the Benjamin Worth group and the Uganda group reach the New England Journal of Medicine. So the global neurotrauma outcome study is extremely important in the way of getting education and in the way of getting data from all over the world and keeping us aware of what is the possibility to treat patients with traumatic injuries in so different countries. And as we have done recently with Peter Atkinson and other colleagues, another issue is involving colleagues from countries who have limited facility but a large number of trauma in our publications. And as you see, this example is a combination of Western university together with Colombia, Pakistan, India, Nigeria, and so on. So we need basically, we need to work together. And just to finish, this is the bridge in Rome, one of the oldest bridges we have. It's a middle-aged bridge built up on a Roman bridge. And we need that on one side of the bridge are the Western countries, Europe, US, Australia, Japan, China, and everything. On that part of the bridge are the countries in need, and we need to connect them with all the possibility we have. This we are doing today is one possibility, like education via web. We have to invest resources, we have to collect data, we have to publish data, and we have to suggest intervention. That's my view. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Franco. Any questions or comments from the panel? We have a very big panel today. We have with us Professor Ignatius Izine. He is the chair of the Young African Society of Neurosurgeons. Could you please shed some light on Professor Franco's talk and your opinions about that?
Yeah, let me bump that screen share off.
Yep.
Where are you?
Okay, there we go. Okay, there you go. Okay, Hira.
Hello?
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Professor Ignatius.
Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, I'm not a professor yet. Hoping to be a professor soon. So actually, it was a very nice presentation for Professor Franco. And actually, I just finished my training in Cairo in the US, and then I returned to Cameroon. And what Professor Franco has been saying is what we are finding on the ground. For example, in Cameroon, we have about 20 neurosurgeons, and most of them are located within the major cities. So there's a problem of quantity, and then there's another problem of geographical distributions of the neurosurgeons. So even though they are few, the few that are available are only located in the urban centers. So you find all the rural areas having a lack of neurosurgeons. So this is a general trend which you will find across Africa. And the second point he raised was about the non-10 that showed that there were just about 0.3% of the publications in the neurosurgery journal of neurosurgery and ACTA that were from Africa. So this also comes again to corroborate what he's saying, that even though most of the publications are coming from the developed countries, the guidelines are based on this evidence, and we have to apply them in the developing countries. So we in the developing countries actually need to step up in the publication, and that's actually what we are doing at the level of the young African neurosurgeons. That's why we also encourage most of the young neurosurgeons to participate in this study, especially the global neurotrauma outcome study. And we also encourage them in other many multi-center studies, because this is also going to help to provide data about Africa. And as you can notice, there's basically no data about Africa in most of the websites. So I'm sure in the next coming years, we are going to provide a lot of data for Africa.
Thank you.
Ulrich, do you want to say something?
Any other questions, any comments from the panel?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, Manuel, please.
Can
you please introduce yourself and then proceed? Yes.
My name is Manuel. I'm from Dominican Republic. Right now I am in Moscow. I am resident of neurosurgery. Buon pomeriggio, professore.
Thank you, grazie.
Io sono andato a Napoli l'anno scorso, professor Capabianca.
Perfect. Thank you.
So my question is, for example, I came from Dominican Republic. We are now in Dominicana, they are like 60 or 70 neurosurgeons. But for example, almost maybe 50 of them, more than the 70% is in the capital, in Santo Domingo. There is like in the border with Haiti, we have 5 cities, and around that cities another ones, and they don't have neurosurgeons, nothing at all. So the people from the borders, I work in the border 1 year. The people from the border with head trauma, and if they need to see a neurosurgeon, they need to go 300 kilometers for the public neurosurgeon, because in the private they can get, but still it's like 200 kilometers in another cities. And in a very few hospitals in my country, they don't have like even microscope, for example, and don't even talk about endoscope. So what the World Federation of Neurosurgical Society can do from that kind of country, for example, because we are poor country and very few neurosurgeons.
Well, this is an issue that if you go to the website of the World Federation and you click over a country now, since I think 1 year, we are working on accessibility, meaning which part of the population of that country has access to neurosurgery within an hour, which is important because, as you said, in many countries in the world, even in many countries with low and middle income, the number of neurosurgeons may be enough, but they all are in the same area. There are no neurosurgeons outside this area. And this is a problem which can be solved only, I think, through education in the country. There are countries who are putting now efforts to, let's say, when the educated neurosurgeon, the young one, come back, they are almost obliged to go for 3 years in rural areas and not to stay in the central areas. In China, I know that now in many areas of China, it's almost mandatory that you have to pass 2-3 years over there. But this is something that is difficult, because if you want to send someone there, you need instrument, as you say, you need microscope. You cannot send the people to operate without anything. It's a complex issue. We are starting to work on that. And if you click, for instance, on Repubblica Dominicana on our website, I have done it now, you have a map with colors which tell you where are the neurosurgeons and which are the areas where we don't have neurosurgeon. This is some things to start with, to know how is it in single countries, and then intervene. But it's difficult. I agree with you. This is another issue. In some countries, we don't have enough neurosurgeons. In some countries, we have, but they are all in the same area. You're right.
For example, in my personal experience in 2004, I remember a friend of my family, he had a head trauma in a motorcycle. And he was in a city called San Juan, and he need to go to the capital because there is no neurosurgery in all that area. And of course, unfortunately, he died because it was like 200 kilometers.
Well, we need to involve the politicians to understand that we need the neurosurgery spread all over the country, not concentrated. But remember, it's not only a problem of politicians. Sometimes the neurosurgeon like to be where is the money, I tell you clearly.
No, yes.
In the capital, they want to work there. We can understand it. So we have to find a system that the youngest one will pass part of their education and stay in remote areas. That's the only way, in my opinion.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you. Any more questions, comments? Professor Cherian, would you like to add some comments to Professor Franco's talk?
Yes, I have comment about Professor Franco.
Yeah, please introduce yourself.
Yes, hello, good morning, everybody. I am Nuruddin Adenera Bankole.
Yeah,
I am a resident. Yes. I am a resident in WFNS Center, Reference Center in Rabat, in Morocco. I'm so glad to meet you again, Professor Franco Savede. I met you last time in Marrakesh. Last time, and it's pleasure to meet you. Yes, it's very nice to me to meet you again today, and I would really I would want to thank you for all you've done for young neurosurgeon in Africa. We know now since many years that you've done big effort to keep up and to keep up African young neurosurgeon and to help us to going together further. And I would like to thank you very much. And we young neurosurgeon we have now we now our I don't know how I can explain that, but we know that we have one challenge today, and this challenge is to be strong between us in Africa and save life about our population and do all our best to treat in our country all pathology about neurosurgery, like vascular pathology, tumoral pathology, pediatric neurosurgery, all these pathology. We know that today we have to fix this challenge to treat our own population in our country. Not need to done transport or transfer to another country. So we are working together to attain and to achieve this goal, and we know now we can trust on you, and you are really here to help us, and I would like to say really thanks you, and we are on the same way. Thank you very much, Professor Franco.
No, thank you for working with us. I have to thank you. Thank you very much. We see us soon in Tanja.
Yes, I know, in June.
In June. Yes,
Yes.
correct.
You're welcome, Professor. Welcome.
Thank you so much. We'll just take one more question and then we'll move on to the next. We have Dr. Ulrich with us. He is also from Africa and he has some few points to raise. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Ulrich Sidney, a final year medical student and future research associate at Harvard. Thanks for your presentation, Professor. Just a few comments about the lack of research from low and middle income countries. I would like to suggest that there should be more programs from the WFNS via the Young African Neurosurgeons to help students to participate as well. Because I believe the earlier we get immersed into research, the better it will be. Then the second thing is usually African researchers and neurosurgeons don't have access to the same kind of funds that their high-income country counterparts will have access to. So that's another issue we need to address. And the publishers, usually they accept fancy granular research, whereas in Africa, we're still for most of our research at very basic kind of research. So when a neurosurgeon comes up with an article, usually he doesn't have the ease to publish into, say, ACTA or neurosurgery and all the other big reviews. And then finally, I'd like to congratulate the initiative from WFNS, but particularly from the Young African Neurosurgeons via Dr. Estene Ignatius. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, just to give you a last comment, you're right. I mean, you're right in many. We need to have a share of fundings, and we need to understand that if we want, I give you an example, if we want to publish guidelines, we cannot go ahead like we have done now. We have to invest some money to involve our colleagues from Africa and East Asia to work with us. And investing the money that we are investing for the process of evidence-based would be enough to have some of you working with us. We need to work together. We cannot separate the world into two parts. That's you are right. We need the funding is an issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we are already running ahead of time. So I'd like to move on to the next presentation. Is there anyone? Professor Chirin, would you like to add a small comment or something?
No, thank you, Professor. You're welcome to use this platform and your goals. Thank you.
Hi, Hira. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Can you hear me, Hira?
Yes.
Okay. Professor Franco, good morning.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
My name is Sugar Hinojosa. I'm a fifth-year resident of Peru. I have been just recently with Professor Ipar in Nepal for 4 months. What I want to add is not only what World Federation can do for us, but also it's the commitment of each and every one of us about taking care of these things, taking care of our education, taking care of be the best version of us and spread all the knowledge that we have. Sometimes we as neurosurgeons, sometimes we have all the knowledge and sometimes we don't want to share. I mean, it's not like everybody can travel and everybody can learn some stuff. That's not question about it. But it's the attitude that one can take about what they know and what they can learn to share. One other thing that I agree with Professor Ulrich is that it is important that you can, in some point, give it the support, not only through some institution like SAIS or some other, like LICA, they can provide some facilities to acquire some instruments or some other stuff for low-income countries, so we can develop and do this surgery that we also need. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Good comments.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Franco. You're more than welcome to stay with us on the panel and as we continue with our next. All right, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. So next we have Professor Peter Hutchinson. He's the director of NIHR Global Health Research Group, and is also the principal investigator for the Global Neurotrauma Outcome Study. Professor Peter Hutchison will shed some highlights on the objectives and background of the NIHR research group. May I please invite Professor Hutchison to take over? Can you hear us?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes.
And can you see the screen?
No, we cannot see your screen yet. Yes, we can see this.
Can you see the screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. It's Peter Hutchinson from Cambridge. I'm going to do this without the video because the internet connection may not be so reliable. So can everybody see the first slide?
Yes, we can see that.
Perfect. Okay,
Yeah.
so here, thank you for organising this webinar. Fantastic. So following on from Professor Servaday, I'm going to provide an update on the work of the NIHR Global Health Research Group on Neurotrauma. So as we know, brain trauma is a pathway for a patient from the scene of an accident through emergency hospital care, operations, intensive care, rehabilitation and reintegration into the community, and is the commonest cause of death under the age of 40 years in high-income countries. But what we're now increasingly aware of, that this is actually a very big problem in the low and middle-income countries, who experience nearly 3 times more cases of traumatic brain injury than the high-income countries. In fact, increasing incidence of one of the major causes of traumatic brain injury, road injury, is now the 8th commonest cause of death globally, and trauma causes 5 million deaths per day on the planet, equivalent to 14,000 deaths per day globally. And by 2030, it is thought that road injury deaths will rise to the 5th commonest cause of death globally. We tend to focus very much on the treatment of traumatic brain injury, but actually, to make a big impact, we probably need to focus more on prevention. This is Lawrence of Arabia, who died in 1934 on his motorcycle. And then to the right, we have Sir Hugh Cairns, who introduced motorcycle helmets during the Second World War. And that's made a big difference in the high-income countries, but there are still many countries in the world where helmets are not worn. If we look at outcome from severe head injury, what kills people is hypoxia and hypotension. And if we're going to really make an impact in terms of the treatment, I think we need to begin by addressing these issues in addition to neurosurgical intervention. So ensuring that oxygen and a good blood pressure is delivered to the patients. And that needs to begin very early at the scene of the incident, and particularly in terms of pre-hospital care. And there's been a very encouraging and interesting initiative from India, where the National Highways Authority will soon deploy an ambulance, a highway patrol vehicle, and a crane every 50 kilometers across their network in order to get medical care to road traffic accident victims more quickly. So that leads us on to the Global Health Research Group on Neurotrauma. So the UK government have signed up to 0.7% of national expenditure on official development or overseas development assistance, the ODA. And much of this money is being spent through the National Institute for Health Research. That is the research branch of the National Health Service. So in 2017, we established with the NIHR the Global Health Research Group on Neurotrauma. It was launched in Cambridge, and the website there is neurotrauma.world. And we argued for the creation of the group on the basis that traumatic injury is increasing worldwide, with the greatest increase in low and middle income countries, and neurological injury is one of the most catastrophic, and good quality care is complex. And there is an argument that improvements in care need to be supported by high quality data. So the group has a number of international partners who are involved in the original application, but an increasing number of other partners through the GENOS study. And in particular, collaboration with supporting organizations, so the WFNS, many international organizations, and most recently with WHO. The group has 4 themes. Theme 1, mapping traumatic brain injury care. 2 is understanding traumatic brain injury care. 3 is innovation in traumatic brain injury care. And 4 is building research capacity. The GENOS study fits within theme 1, mapping TBI care, and we are aiming for an online registry endorsed by the WFNS to understand the volume, case mix, and neurosurgical practice of patients with traumatic brain injury within the partnership of the group, but also around the world. I will just present GENOS very briefly, then Dr. David Clark will present where we are in terms of an update in more detail. So emergency surgery for TBI was recognized by the Lancet Commission, as Professor Servaday talked about, and intracranial haematoma evacuation is one of the should-do surgical procedures. GENOS aims for the first time to provide a comprehensive picture of the management and outcome of patients undergoing emergency cranial surgery after a TBI worldwide, the objective being to compare outcomes for emergency surgery between high and low Human Development Index countries. Any hospital in the world can participate, any hospital that performs emergency cranial surgery. This is a multi-center prospective observational study, and we are trying to collect 1 month of data, a consecutive 30-day period between October 2018 and October 2019. The outcome measures a 14-day mortality, return to the operating theatre during the follow-up period, length of stay in hospital, length of stay in intensive care, data on infections, and the Glasgow Coma discharge. GENOS, that David will present later, is a snapshot of 1 month of data, but we're hoping this will be a prelude to GeoTBI, which will be an international registry of traumatic brain injury. So that is theme 1. I will briefly mention the other themes that are part of the Global Neurotrauma Group. Theme 2 is understanding traumatic brain injury care. This is using a systems engineering approach to model current practice and how we could make a change in order to improve treatment and outcome. And this is being led by a member of the group, Dr. Tom Bashford, and is run with a number of partners, but predominantly through Myanmar and Yangon General Hospital. And what theme 2 involves is identifying stakeholders and their needs, looking at the elements in a system, what are the interactions, how we can model current practice, and then how we can model a change in that practice would impact on improving outcome for patients. Theme 3 is new innovations and new technology that are appropriate to improving the management of patients, particularly system optimization, risk stratification, surgical intervention, and trying to address the challenge of long-term outcome data collection. So what are some of the technologies we're currently looking at? So if you look at the evolution of technology to investigate intracerebral hematomas, We have CT scans in hospital. Fixed CT scans have become mobile. For example, the Ceratom scanner now can be placed in an ambulance. But can we move towards more simple devices that can be used in the pre-hospital environment? For example, the infra scanner. This is something that the group is currently evaluating. We know that intracranial pressure is related to outcome from patients. It is routinely used in many centres throughout the planet, but can we actually measure intracranial pressure without having to put invasive drains or probes in the brain? And the group, Chiara Robber, has looked at using ultrasound as a non-invasive measurement of intracranial pressure. How do we do that? By measuring the optic nerve sheath diameter. And what we've shown is a good relationship between the optic nerve sheath diameter and the intracranial pressure. Ultrasound machines historically have been large and expensive, but with modern technology, the Philips Lumify, we can have a handheld, relatively cheap ultrasound scanner connected to a smartphone for its display. The UK government have also set up the Surgical Technology Evaluation Portal, STEP, collaboration between the NHS, the Brain Injury MedTech Cooperative, and the Royal College of Surgeons of England to try and create new devices in terms of technology evaluation to assist in the investigation and management of patients. And if anybody has any ideas for new technology, we will be delighted to hear from them. Finally, theme 4 is about building research capacity, output, and training. So a plan to currently map research capacity and output and address this discrepancy in terms of where brain injury is happening compared to where brain injury publications are emerging. And some examples, this is a project run out of Malaysia with Professor Vignesh Warren, who is using telemedicine to try and manage patients remote parts of Malaysia without having to transfer them to a neurosurgical unit. Other examples are the utilization of research through randomized controlled trial technologies. So this is the Rescue ASDH study, a randomized study of decompressive craniectomy versus craniotomy for acute subdural hematomas. And this has been a major international effort. It has just closed to recruitment, recruited over 460 patients. And what's fantastic about this study is the major contribution made by the lower middle income countries, such that Nimhans Hospital in Bangalore was the largest randomization of patients. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues in Cambridge, but many people further afield, the lower middle income country partners. Also, the funders for this work, particularly the National Institute for Health Research, who have funded the group. We had a meeting in Birmingham last week looking at some of the outputs from the various groups, and the UK government are encouraged in terms of the progress of our group, and hopefully will enable us to continue, flourish and grow more studies over the next few years. So that is globalneurotrauma.com. David will talk about it more, but please join GENOS. Please put more patients in any 30-day period between the 1st of October 2018 and the 1st of October 2019. If anybody has any questions, very happy to take them now, or please email me at pjah2@cam.ac.uk. And again, thank you to Hira for the invitation. Thank you for John for all his assistance with the technology. Okay, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, thank you, Professor, for an excellent presentation. I'm John Bennett of Neurosurgical TV. I'm not a neurosurgeon, but I can comment on the technology. It's 5G wireless is obviously the direction. And I just want to show you an example. Can you see this? Let me get my cell phone. Can you see this machine here?
No, John.
Okay, hold on. Yeah, I'm just learning this technology here.
All right.
Okay, at any rate, let me see here.
Shall I come off the share screen? Would that be helpful?
You're already off the. So. He's already off the screen share.
I'm off the screen now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here. Yeah.
Okay. At any rate, let me just explain. It's they're wireless diagnostic devices. Is a wireless device that hooks to a smartphone that you can project a screen on a white wall for webinars like this.
Yes.
And
Fantastic.
the same thing applies to imaging studies. With the smartphone and the ultrasound, those devices are going to get stronger, especially in areas of low bandwidth. That's just the one remark I want to make. And thank you, Professor.
No, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Anybody have any questions?
Anybody has any questions or comments? Yes, Professor Tariq, please.
Hi, Haj. Just want to make a comment. Hi. Just want to make a comment. I think it's an amazing venture which you people have got together. I've always been thinking of trying to develop a neurotrauma registry, and I think going international is the way to go. I think it will make a huge difference. And what we talk about not having papers coming out of the lower and middle income countries, I think this is going to solve a lot of problems. And I'm thankful to you and your Cambridge colleagues for that.
No, Tariq, and thank you for your tremendous support through the WFNS Neurotrauma Committee in terms of spreading the message, particularly about GNOS. It's really appreciated.
Thank you so much. Any more questions?
I have a question.
Yes, please. Introduce yourself, please.
My name is Elam. I'm a young neurosurgeon.
Yeah.
I'm an Ethiopian and currently working in Malawi, helping out a friend here. So, for example, here, we don't have a CT scan in the main hospital, but rather we have in the private setups.
Yes.
So we are 2 neurosurgeons here who are fully equipped with knowledge, but at some point we are actually handicapped because of the lack of the CT scan, and most of the patients wouldn't afford that. And I like the idea of this optic sheath, optic nerve sheath, the diameter measurement, and also you can get the infra scanner, whereby it helps, at least for now, for the time being, to identify where the hematoma location is.
Yeah.
And we're trying our best, even clinically, to do decompressive craniotomies, whereby if they have any anisocoria and weakness of one extremities. But we are also interested in getting involved with this global neurosurgery data collection, at least for 1 month. But without having the CT scan, it will be a very few cases, whereby we will not have adequate cases to show what our actual potential is. Because most of the time we'll just keep them admitted in the ICU for a few days and then keep them sedated and then discharge them. So how do you think we can come about with this association for a minor, for this short period of time?
So 2 things. So the first is we'd be delighted to try and help you get some of these technologies. So maybe if you could email me afterwards, and we have a group meeting on Monday, and we'll see if we can get you more involved in the group.
Okay.
The second is if you are operating on patients with head and traumatic brain injury, which you are doing, even without a CT scanner, then you can still put those patients in the GNOS study.
Okay.
So you don't have to have a CT scan to go, but providing you're performing the surgery. And I think that would be really valuable data for, to know that surgery is going on without a CT scanner. But we'd be happy to help try and get some of this technology into Malawi.
Okay. We'll be very delighted, because like most of the time we'll have this, we're not sure if we should go and operate on some of the cases.
Sure.
Because you might end up with just having a small contusion or on just a diffuse axonal injury. So that's the trouble that we are having. Sometimes for some of our patients, we send them for a private, but for most people here, They
Yes.
cannot afford having a CT scan in a private setup.
No, I
Maybe
understand.
$150. So, but we are working on trying to get the CT scan for the hospital, but you know, the bureaucracy and the politics in each places. But I think if we try to get maybe the optic sheath nerve diameter access and also the infra scanner, somehow may help.
It will be a start, and then to try and get the pressure to. I mean, the mobile CT scanner, the Ceratom, is very good, and it's a lot cheaper than putting in a fixed CT scanner. But I think it would be good to start with some of the more bedside technologies.
Yeah.
Please email me.
Okay, sure thing. I will email you. Thank you.
Okay, I've shared his email address in the chat box. Can we have any further? Yes, Professor Cherian.
Yeah. Hey, Tariq. Good to see you, John. All of you. So good to see you guys. You know, one of the things that is that has to be really highlighted, as since we are neurosurgeons, is what are the advances in neurosurgery per se? Not in ICU management, not in registries, not in data collection, but what is the management in surgical technique that has come over the last 100 years? How are we adapting? How are we adopting that into trauma neurosurgery? There's one thing we have to highlight, because you know, trauma is they say trauma is emergent and the neurosurgeon, senior neurosurgeons are not. That is a sad fact. So traumas come at 2 a.m. in the morning. So it is a convenient thing that you know, residents all over the world. It is not a secret that it is the residents, the junior most people that is doing trauma. So it is not enough to just collect the data and see what is happening. It is also that we should press. I mean, is Franco here? We should tell
no,
people
I think he left.
and see what can be done. And that doesn't need too much of an infrastructure. I mean, for me, as far as Nepal is concerned, I'm located in one of the most poorest countries, one of the most poorest. Nepal, if you see, one of the most poorest. And I can proudly say that we probably will have more facilities than any of you sitting out there. I mean, including Adam Brooks. We have intraoperative 3 Tesla, we have everything. And this doesn't come into play with trauma. Trauma, you need just a microscope. And I mean, a CT scan and a microscope, that is all you need, and a good surgeon. So you don't need all these fancy equipment for trauma. For the last 10 years, what we have done in Nepal, we really don't need all this fancy. It just needs the correct mindset that neurosurgeons should not avoid trauma as something secondary. Anybody who says aneurysm should say trauma in the same breath, not as something else. As Professor Hutchison said, if you look at proportionals, low and middle income countries have much more. But if you look at the absolute numbers, it's sheer. The number of head injuries in low and middle income countries, you know, the population is 5-6 there. The population of low and middle income countries are 5-6. So we are looking at 3 times more head injuries in 5-6 of the population. So the people here, the neurosurgeons here, they will have to look at what neurosurgical advances we have to see. Now things are slowly changing, and instead of looking at, I mean, a CT scan is not very difficult in any country. CT scan is not very difficult in this era. I understand. So I'm not speaking from a very high and mighty situation. In Nepal, you must know it's how poor people are. But we can get CT scans. We can get a microscope. The WFNS will help us for that, even in some countries. So let us have the right mindset, and then we'll be okay. Tariq, what do you have to say, Tariq?
Hi. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, here, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Definitely, it's trauma, and I'm so glad that neurotrauma is slowly started taking back its center stage, because we all know that more than 60% of neurosurgical work is neurotrauma. And obviously we need a mindset, and yes, we have to train the juniors on neurotrauma, but it should not be left all to the trainees. These consultants have to be available, and they have to help the young neurosurgeons practice. And that is why when you discuss regarding cystonostomies, I tell everybody that first of all, you must learn microsurgical techniques to ensure that you know what you're doing, and do not learn from videos or from YouTube. Definitely, it's very important, and we have to work more to impress on people regarding neurotrauma care in theater, but also very important is the pre-hospital care, because if your patient does not arrive in time, no matter what you do, really is not going to be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Professor Peter Hutchison, what would you like to say about this?
No, I think that this is all good. Anything that promotes the improvement in neurotrauma care in any country is really good, including advances in surgery, advances in pre-hospital care investigation. But I think we just need to be cautious that we address, if you look at the planet, there's 7 billion people, there's 5 billion people who don't have access to any sort of decent surgical care. So we need to refine it at the top end, but we've got to try and get access to better pre-hospital care, investigations and CT scanners to those that need it.
Correct. We have a question from one of the panelists, Dr. Emeka. Please go ahead.
Hi, good day, everybody.
Good day.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Please introduce yourself.
Oh, great. Yeah, my name is Emeka Nwaribe. I'm a neurosurgeon in Nigeria and also a trauma and critical care fellow here in Nigeria. I must really commend Professor Peter Hutchison for all you're doing in neurotrauma generally, and your group at the NIHR. Now, we have a very unique problem in a part of the world, like most other low and middle income countries. And that is, we have an enormous number of neurotrauma patients who come every day. In fact, last night I'm on call, still on call at the hospital. Last night, a young man, who had suffered a traumatic severe TBI in another hospital, which is about 30 minutes to my center. Of course, before he could get to the hospital here, he had died on the road because, one, we have a poor or non-existent pre-hospital setup. Sure. And that's a huge problem, very, very, very huge problem. Most of the patients come in here at the back of a motorcycle, accompanied by other people, or they come in slumped, bunched up in the back of a taxi or in the back of the police van. There's non-existent pre-hospital care. And most of the time, at the time the patient come in, hypoxia and hypovolemia have killed those patients. The one of yesterday died on arrival. We had gotten ready. They called us. We were ready for the patient by the time the patient came to us. So that's a huge problem for us. We are trying as much as possible to reach out to our governments to try to get something done at a pre-hospital setting. That is one. Again, we have very few neurosurgeons in our environment, and that's still the big problem for us. Now, currently, the society, Nigerian Academy of Neurological Societies in Nigeria, we developed a neurotrauma subcommittee, of which I'm the secretary of the subcommittee. Currently, we are also developing guidelines tailored to our peculiarities in our environment to help us, in the practice of neurosurgery. Because like most people will say, we don't have all the fancy equipment. ICP monitoring is non-existent in our environment. Very few. Once in a while, people will do ICP, and it's very expensive because people pay out of pockets. So it's very non-existent. That's why I love the idea of the non-invasive ICP monitoring. Which you have someone from Malawi mentioned, my friend from Malawi, and you promised to, send some help. We also, the Genos part of it, yes, I'm going to also champion the course of Genos. We'll discuss it in our subcommittee and encourage as many centers as possible to key into it, because it's going to be of help to us. Most people don't know the enormity. Yes, we know that there is a lot of neurotrauma in the low and middle income countries. Well, people don't have the figures. The figures out there do not represent the actual figures we have. They do not represent at all. I look at our trauma, the little registry we've tried to keep here in our trauma center. In the past 4 years, in our registry alone, in the trauma center, we see patients that come within the first 72 hours. We have over 3,000 neurotrauma patients in 4 years. That is over 1,000 a year in just one center. And that's enormous. These are the people who succeed in even coming to the hospital. I'm not talking about those who died at the site of accidents or those who are managing other little areas around us. So that is huge. So I believe that the Juno study will help us a lot, those of us in the low and middle income countries, to give the true figure of the problem we have. I know the figures play a lot of role in assistance given to the various centers. So another area we might need help is we're trying to develop our own local registry. Yes, I saw the registry that is out of the GNOS. It would be nice for us to adapt that, so that subsequently in subsequent studies it will be easier to project data, to a global collection. So thank you very much, group. Professor Hutchison and Professor Savage, he was here in Nigeria the last time we had a CANS Congress, and it was quite very helpful to us. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for those. Thank you for those comments and for really emphasising that it's the hypoxia and hypotension that we need to address in parallel with advances in further management in the emergency department. And in neurosurgery.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Hutchison. We now move to Professor Tariq Khan. He's the chair of the WFNS Neurotrauma Committee and also one of the honorary advisory members of the GNOS study. Professor Tariq Khan, please take over the presentation.
Yeah, let me see if I can now.
Yeah, you need to screen share. Yes.
Yeah, are we good?
Yeah. You just need to put it on the slideshow mode.
Yeah, no. Are we okay?
Yeah. No, it's not coming as on a slideshow. It's
okay. Let's show it. No?
It's coming as a presenter's tool. You need to.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you, Hira. Thank you, John, for inviting me. So I'm going to talk about neurotrauma care in the LMIC's perspective, and I'm going to try and explain what you already know, I suppose, the difference between the developed countries and the lower and middle income countries, really. This is my hospital. We know that 74% of surgeries for traumatic brain injuries are needed in lower and middle income countries. These are the number of surgeries needed, not the number of surgeries done. So there's a big gap of surgeries required in the lower and middle income countries. And that goes again also for traumatic spine injuries. More than 89% of the traumatic spine injuries occur and the surgeries are required are in the lower and middle income countries. So there's a huge number, and we know that there's a big gap of the number of neurosurgeons required in the world, and most of them are from the lower and middle income countries. And I think the numbers are more than 20,000 neurosurgeons required, really. And this is the reason because of the bad traffic. As you know, accidents, people are not following traffic rules. They're not caring about themselves. Although the rules are there everywhere for everybody to follow, but people do not follow them. And this is a slide which everybody is seeing all the time, everywhere. I think it's a competition to see the numbers increasing on the motorbike, really. We did some, in our neurotrauma registry, we looked at the patients coming to us with head trauma, and we saw that in majority of the patients on motorbike accidents, they had no helmets. The 30% unknown, I am sure, would also be the ones who are not wearing helmets. Also, then if you look at the seat belt, then again, majority of the patients coming in with road traffic accidents were not wearing seat belts in our setup. And of course, then the terrorist incidents happening all over the world in different areas, recently in Sri Lanka, unfortunately also. So we know that if we strengthen the trauma systems, including the pre-hospital care and transport and initial care in the emergency departments, it will make a very big difference to the number of patients who are saved really, and who would do better later on. So when we look at what is required and when we look at what is different between us and the developed countries, most important is pre-hospital care, there is the ER care, intensive care, rehabilitation, and then the most important things are the neurotrauma registry, neurotrauma guidelines, as was just suggested by our friend from Nigeria. And the foremost important thing is the prevention of neurotrauma. When we look at this small study which we did in 4 countries from Pakistan, from India, and from Surabaya in Indonesia and Pasar, we found that majority of the patients really who had an accident, they were provided emergency treatment by the local bystanders and not by the ambulance service. There are very few ambulance services, they're not available, and if there are any ambulance available, they do not have any trained paramedics or oxygen or suction or any facilities in the ambulance. And if you look at this slide, when we looked at in these countries, a majority came into the hospital unaccompanied by a nurse or doctor or a paramedic. So very important to develop pre-hospital care, and I think in most of the lower and middle income countries, this would be the foremost thing, what we would be doing, to develop ambulances, train personnel, so that the patients can be treated at the site of accident and then can be transferred safely to the hospital where they are required to go. And when they arrive into the hospital, that they have proper trauma beds and trauma care. Intensive care management doesn't have to be ICP monitoring. Of course, it is something which needs to be done, but it's not something that if you don't have ICP monitoring at the end of the world. No, you can treat, you can manage head injuries in intensive care. Protecting the airway is very important. And one way of protecting the airway, if you cannot intubate and ventilate, is doing a tracheostomy. That makes a very big difference by helping the patients improve their oxygenation and giving oxygen on time really. Of course, if you ventilate the patient, do ICP monitoring, do all the parameters, it's going to make even better difference. After doing all that, rehabilitation is something which is not available in most of the lower and middle income countries. In fact, if you look at studies where patients were treated for craniotomies, decompressive craniotomies in lower middle income countries and in developed countries like a study from India and United States, the initial outcome score was the same, but 6 months outcome score was big difference because the patients in the United States were getting rehabilitation, where in India they were not getting rehabilitation, and the mortality rate suddenly increased tremendously. So it's very important, and when we look at this study again from these 4 countries, we found that majority of the patients are being discharged to their families. And one way of looking at it, what we found was to train the family members in giving physiotherapy, tracheostomy care, limb care, DVT care, catheter care, and nasogastric tube feeding, etc., to the family members, and that we have found is helpful. And if it is done in a proper fashion, in a structured fashion. data systems are not available. Some people use police data or some combined databases. The reason, as we say, that the 90% of trauma occurs in LMICs, but 90% of papers on trauma come out of developed countries is because there is no trauma registry. And I think this global neurotrauma outcome study is a very big step towards inculcating into our minds that we must have a trauma registry, neurotrauma registry, and also teaching us how to make a neurotrauma registry. And I think moving forwards and developing a international neurotrauma registry would be very good. We in our hospital have our own neurotrauma registry. This is a web-based online registry, and you can have so many parameters. And it shows us here that the time from injury to presentation is greater than 24 hours in majority of the patients. And so we know that, first of all, that the neurosurgeons are not available in remote areas. All the neurosurgeons are concentrated in the urban population. The roads are very bad, and the pre-hospital care is not good, and most of the people are being transported in their own vehicles there. And of course, this is the TBI diagnosis of different patterns. And you can see that the type of severe injuries and moderate injuries. So I think it's very important to develop a neurotrauma registry. Guidelines were mentioned. I think setting the minimal standards of care from the accident site to the hospital and to rehab are very important. If we say that we do not have high-tech facilities available and so we cannot have proper guidelines, no. I think it's important to develop guidelines, and that is why the Neurotrauma Committee has tasked a group to develop multi-layered guidelines so that starting from lower level but reaching to the gold standard of guidelines. Every country and neurosurgeons must strive to develop guidelines for the peripheral hospitals, the referring hospitals, and for their own neurosurgeons for pre-hospital care, ER care, and in ICU and in theater. So it's, I think, something very important. This is a thing written in Urdu. This is it's something which is given to the patient's relatives when the patient is going home to ensure that if there is any problems for the patient, they're all written down. These are some guidelines for the patient's relatives that if the patient is vomiting or has got headache or has fits, that they must bring them back to the hospital. I think this is something which can be done by everybody, just a piece of paper given to the patient's relatives. But the most important thing is prevention. I think we know very well that most of the injuries, head injuries, can be prevented. And we teach people here by doing regular walks in our neurosurgical society meetings, by having conferences and using students to develop posters. And in one of our colleges, a non-medical college, home economics college, they have it in the curriculum to go and teach students in schools, school children, about the prevention of neurotrauma. And I think, again, something which the lower and middle income country neurosurgeons must look at and spend time on. And you must get in touch maybe with Think First International, which is the International Injury Prevention Foundation, which works a lot on prevention. And the Neurotrauma Committee of the WFNS has partnered with Think First International on this thing to do prevention of head injuries. And this is something which I must show you, this collaboration with WHO and many organizations on the Vietnam's mandatory motorcycle helmet law. You will be amazed at the number of people who survived the following day when the helmets were made mandatory. And the helmets were made cheap, and they were porous, so that the concept of this thing of having in the heat you cannot wear helmets. That was taken away as well. So out of the box thinking, and I think if you go to Hanoi now, you'll find that everybody is wearing helmets there. We have been working with Key Park, the Harvard Group School of Public Health, on developing comprehensive recommendations for management of brain and spine injuries. And these are for the public, for the government sector. And we are going to present them on 15th November 2019 in Peshawar, along with the ICRAN, which unfortunately we had to postpone from March. And we would love for all of you to come here. And the idea is that 80% of the world has access to essential neurosurgical care by 2030, and 80% of the world is within 4 hours of neurosurgical center by 2030. And very important that 90% of LMICs with national neurotrauma plans in place by 2021. We have piggybacked it on the national vision for surgical care in Pakistan, which is going to be the vision for 2025. And this is the on the National Surgical, Obstetric and Aesthetic Plan, which the WHO has proposed. So all of you must look at this, the low and middle income countries. And the plan is that we should develop the Peshawar recommendations in November and go forward. And in 2021, we should have done more when we go to Colombia. And this is the timeline. Another thing which we are working on is mass casualty centers to integrate for natural and unnatural disasters, and between collaboration between developed and developing countries, for health delivery, for medical education, for medical research and poverty reduction. Our center, Northwest General Hospital, now is a WFNS collaborative center for neurotrauma for 3 months, and anybody interested, they can come here for 3 months for neurotrauma training, and we provide free stay, accommodation, and food here. And I would like to welcome you all again, once again, to the ICRAN from the 14th to 17th November, and we still have some scholarships which we can give to young neurosurgeons coming from low and middle income countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Tariq Khan.
Okay.
Thank you. So do we have any comments, questions from the panel?
Yes,
Anyone?
yes.
Yes.
Good morning, Professor Tariq. I'm so glad to meet you again on the panel. I remember, I hope it is in August or September, when we done here a webinar about hysterostomy, and you show me well how to dissect gently carotid around optic nerves. I'm so glad to meet you again, and thank you for your brilliant presentation. It is so clear. And now the problem we have, it is about severe injury of brain. And I am on one work, prospective one work in my department about traumatic brain injury severe, and we don't have ICP monitoring, but we done Doppler transcranial to have correlation about clinical and imaging CT scan before take decision about management. And now I am really convinced that only cranectomy decompressive not just sufficient. We have to go both about cranectomy decompressive and cisternostomy. And I read one paper of you, I think you, when you done your last presentation webinar, and we have to move together about this recommendation, and it will be a great benefit about our patient. And I want to thank you very much, and say welcome to all guys who come in this panel today. Thank you, Professor Tariq.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I look forward to you joining us in November in Peshawar and giving a presentation on your experiences on neurotrauma and management.
Thank you so much. We are really running ahead of time. So I'll just quickly move on to the next presenter, Dr. David Clark. Thank you so much, Professor Tariq Khan. You are more than welcome to stay. Dr. David Clark is the Clinical Research Fellow at NIHR. He's the co-principal investigator, and he will be updating us on the current scenario of GNOS. Dr. David.
Thanks, Hira.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you see my screen?
No, yeah.
You see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, Hira and John, for the invitation. And thanks very much to Professor Khan and Dr. Cherian and everyone else, and Dr. Aseni and everyone else on the call who supported the GNOS study. We're very grateful. And to Professor Hutchinson, but I have to say that because he's my boss. So I'm just going to, I mean, a lot of this has been covered already, but I'll just give a quick update on the global neurotrauma outcome study. So some of these figures have been presented already, but to me, the best study so far about the global burden of TBI worldwide is the Global Burden of Disease study. Their analysis from 2016, which was published either this year or last year, and they estimate about 27 million cases of TBI happen per year, all TBI, severe, moderate, and mild. And about 10% of all deaths worldwide, this is from the GVD study as well, are due to injuries. So as Professor Hutchinson said, about 5 or 6 million deaths per year. And most deaths due to trauma are due to, well, either massive hemorrhage from thoracoabdominal, pelvic, or long bone wound, or due to TBI. A lot of them really are due to TBI. So it's a very large burden in terms of mortality and indeed morbidity. And we don't know exactly how many traumatic brain injuries require surgery because we don't really have data from low and middle income countries yet, but about 4% of those admitted in the US, this is from the US National Trauma Data Bank, will require surgery. So it's quite a large burden, and obviously that figure applies to the whole spectrum of TBI, including mild TBI. And so in severe and moderate TBI, it's a much higher proportion that requires surgery. So, I mean, the GNOS study is really focusing, initially at least, on the surgical management of TBI, and it's long been known, you know, there's many classic papers from the 80s and beyond that timely and appropriate surgical intervention for TBI is associated with a much more favorable outcome. And if you present more than 4 hours after the trauma or more than 2 hours after slipping into a coma, then your outcome is much worse following a trauma craniotomy for a acute subdural or extradural, for example. And as we've already said, now multiple global surgery and global health organizations are starting to recognize that. And there's emerging evidence that actually, from groups like Harvard, that, that it's economically efficient to provide this service as well. So I think this slide has already been put up, but you know, in essence, the GNOS study is a multi-center international prospective cohort study. Teams pick any 30-day period between the 1st of October last year and the 1st of October this year. So there's still plenty of time to participate and just collect data on all patients receiving emergency surgery for TBI during that time period and follow them up for 14 days. So for most sites, it's not a particularly onerous study to participate in. And teams consist of neurosurgeons, but also anesthetists, intensivists, who've supported our study an awful lot, as well as residents and medical students, many of whom have been instrumental in setting up the study at their institution. The study consists of 2 parts, really. So this is I just put up the data fields from the patient data set. I will just say, in addition to the patient data set, we also do ask sites to fill out a site questionnaire about the resources they have for the management of acute brain injury. And that includes things like, do you regularly have access to a mechanical ventilator for your severe TBIs? Do you have ICP monitoring? Do you have adequate pre-hospital care? Things like that. And that is, so far, of the sites that participated, produced quite an interesting set of results that haven't really been reported before. And just to highlight a few things on this, in addition to basic sort of demographic and epidemiological data, we've got quite a few fields here which pertain to pre-hospital care, which has already been highlighted as very important, and personally I think is probably the rate limiting step in terms of improving outcome from severe TBI or moderate and severe TBI. So to direct your attention, there's a couple fields on whether or not there is a pre-surgery episode of hypotension or hypoxia, which is obviously very important. And also the time to hospital, which is going to be one of the main determinants, as I've already said. There's a number of fields on operative data, and then the outcomes are fairly basic. It's survival to discharge or 14 days post-surgery, similar to that used in the CRASH study, which is the biggest study done on TBI so far, including low and middle income countries, and a number of other variables, including surgical site infection, ICU stay, but no long-term outcome. And I'll come back to that in a second. So, oops. So all this slide is just to highlight that all team members, so teams are 2 to 4 people at each institution, and all team members will be recognized as PubMed citable collaborators on all publications resulting from the study, and sort of to demonstrate this is a collaborative study more than anything else. And then this is just a quick oops, sorry. This is just a quick, oh, my mistake, sorry. Update on where we are so far. So 108 sites have signed up, 50 countries, 9 of which are in sub-Saharan Africa, 21 sites in total. It's quite a diverse range of sites we have. So about 5 come from what can be defined as conflict or post-conflict zones. So far Iraq, Syria, and Libya. And I highlight this because the data so far suggests that actually the countries in the world with the highest incidence of traumatic brain injury and traumatic spinal cord injury, perhaps not surprisingly, are countries that currently have active conflicts. And this is from the Global Burden of Disease study as well. And as you can see, there's quite a good split of sites from both high, what are considered by the UN high Human Development Index countries and low, medium or low Human Development Index countries, which roughly maps to high versus low and middle income countries, or other ways of stratifying countries based on their development. And what's quite nice about this is, as has already been highlighted, actually there aren't many neurosurgeons in low and middle income countries. So to have a good representation, a good sample from both low and medium HDI index countries is something we're quite glad about. And this is just a map demonstrating roughly where sites are coming from. This is not quite up to date, but it does give you an idea of the spread of sites. So I said 108 sites or teams certainly have participated in data collection so far. About 56% have completed their study period, and about 700 patients have been entered into the database so far. So, and we're just about halfway through now, so we're quite hopeful we'll have quite a good sample size. And the point of this presentation isn't to present data from the study because it's ongoing, but just because this is a specifically neurosurgical presentation. I have put this slide up to just show the numbers of procedures, the numbers of each type of procedure that have been entered for interest more than anything else. The most common is evacuation of a supratentorial extradural hematoma, followed by an acute subdural hematoma. I would direct your attention, just because one of the next talks is Dr. Cherian presenting, that we do have about 20 cases of cystonostomy from different sites, and that's a very, could be a quite interesting aspect of the study, what we're excited about. In addition, there's also quite a few cases of what have been defined as exploratory burr holes, as in operating without a CT. Some of these are not truly exploratory burr holes. Some have been sort of burr holes for chronic subdural hematoma, for example, that have been incorrectly entered, but there are a few that genuinely are exploratory burr holes. And certainly my experience of working in Zambia, which is where I'm based at the moment, is that the vast majority of general surgical centers in this country, at least, working at sort of second level provincial hospitals, do still regularly perform exploratory burr holes. So it's a phenomenon that's worth studying, because at the moment it's particularly unregulated. And that's pretty much all I wanted to say. The only other thing I don't have a slide for that I want to highlight is that the GENOS study is a snapshot study, but we do want to and have plans to and are in the process of designing a longitudinal hospital-based registry for all admitted traumatic brain injury cases called the GOTBI registry. And we're hopeful that the GENOS study will then progress on to this registry. And in that registry, we will hope to do things like collect robust long-term outcome data, both in terms of functional, neuropsychological, and economic data. But there's still plenty of time to sign up for the study. You can sign up at globalneurotrauma.com, or if you have any queries, you're welcome to email me on genos@globalneurotrauma.com, or I can answer questions now. But otherwise, thank you very much for the opportunity to present the study.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions from the panel to be asked from Dr. Clark regarding study participation? Any questions? Anyone having any troubles in signing up or something?
Well, I just have one comment.
Yes, please.
Yeah, well, Dave, yeah, thank you for the update. I noticed you said there are 21 sites from Sub-Saharan Africa, from 9 countries, right?
Yes.
Yes. So please, I will. Well, I'm the chair of the Young Neurosurgeon Committee of the Continental Association of African Neurosurgical Societies. So we've been encouraging the young neurosurgeons to participate in in the GENOS study. As you know, trauma is mostly done by the young neurosurgeons and the residents in most of the countries. So I will appreciate if you could send to me the details, the countries that have already participated, so I can maybe try to follow up with the countries that have not yet maybe joined the study.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I'll do that as soon as the webinar is finished, but thank you. That would
Yes,
be
fantastic. Yes, you can contact Angelus. He can forward it to me. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I'll email and CC both you, but that would be wonderful, because we're very keen of all regions to Sub-Saharan Africa is one that we'd really like to have participate.
Okay.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay, so that's all.
I have a question.
Yes,
Here. One
yes,
question,
yes, John.
please.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many countries do you have participating? How many parties are participating now?
There's 108 sites, or 108 teams. Some hospitals have sort of 2 teams participating, so probably about kind of 100 teams, and it's from 50 different countries.
Okay, so you're happy with the response?
We're quite happy, yes, but there's always room for more, and so yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, John. Okay, so next we have Professor Ike Cherian. He is the Counselor General for ACNS, and he is also the honorary member of the GENOS study. Professor Cherian, please. Professor Cherian, are you there?
I hope I didn't take a break.
No, I think he's. Just let me.
Let me check here, see where he's in the panel.
He is in the panel.
In the panel, let me unmute
yeah.
him. Maybe he can't hear us.
Can send him a WhatsApp message.
Oh, okay. Hello, Ike.
Trying to do that.
Message. Let me
so
get
one small question from my side, Dr. Clark.
Yeah, you're gonna have to send him that link here, because I can't send the link.
Yeah.
Link?
No, I think he is here, but he's just muted and his video is off.
Can I come in, Hira?
Yeah, hold on.
Just a moment, Dr. Raja. I am trying to get through Dr. Ipe. Just give me a moment. Dr. Clark, I have one small question if you're still there.
Yep.
Yeah, the thing is that when we are trying to get to participate, like I personally did that in Nepal with Professor Cherian Center. I was there, and there are a lot of troubles going through the, enrolling your center and then going to the ethics committee because that is a big problem for most countries, especially in regions like Pakistan and in India perhaps. In Nepal, we had some troubles going through that because it says that this is an audit and this is not a study which requires official approval. So if you could just highlight on this fact a little bit, and then we can start with Professor Chiring. He's now here.
Yeah, it's a very fair point. I mean, because I'm based in Zambia at the moment, I organize the ethics for Cambridge, but also for Zambia.
Yeah.
It's much more difficult to get the study approved in Zambia than it is in Cambridge. So I do sympathize. I mean, I guess the barriers are, as you say, mostly this study in many jurisdictions will be considered research, so you'll need to go through the full ethical application, and we've not really got a way around that. The other thing is that some sites have reported is that there is a cost applying to ethics and in particular for an international collaborative study. So I think for studies in the future, certainly
that was a problem which we faced in like I personally faced that in Nepal when we were trying to seek approval for the GNOS. So like we had to go through a whole lot of process and go through a local body and then the national body. So it was, and despite the fact that it was said that this has been regarded as an audit rather than an original study. So this is a problem which is going on, and most in these countries where we already have problems with collection of data, then we have to go through added hurdles of having ethics review and all these things. So is there any way we can just...
I think the simple answer is unfortunately no. I mean, we still haven't. One of our main problems at the moment is we still haven't got approval from the Indian National Ethics Committee, the HMSC.
Yes.
And that's been a big problem because over 1 billion people and many of our sites from there want to participate. The only thing that can be said is that if we run a study like this, an iteration of a study like this in the future, at least we're aware of the sort of ethical barriers and can kind of account for that proactively. But no, it has been definitely, even from our end, it's been quite a struggle in some jurisdictions.
Okay, so we hope for a better response in future. So now we have Professor Chiring with us. He will be highlighting about his experience in GNOS and his experience of cystinostomy. Professor Chiring.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I mean, I heard some good talks from Tariq, David, Hutch, everybody. See, my only point is, as I've always been telling, I don't have anything against decompressive, but over the last 100 years, we haven't changed. It's changing now. I can see that GNOS has put us, it's a great honor that GNOS has listed us as one of the treatment options. It is changing, and I completely am obliged to Franco, Peter Hutchison, Professor Peter Hutchison, David Clark, and Ezine, and all the other people involved in GNOS, that we are obliged that it's been put as one of the options in GNOS. So, over the last 10 years that I've been doing this, I've been showing some videos which are very hunky-dory. And Tariq was probably referring to those videos when he said that you see these videos on the YouTube, and then you realize that it is not the same when you open a tight brain. So what I thought is, I will show you some really mean videos. These are my dark secrets, okay? So these are videos where, which can get most of the surgeons to pee in their pants, okay? But we're going to show you that. And before that, I will just tell you as to what is the anatomical basis of cystonostomy. And well, the physiology is well published right now. It's a lot of people know about CSF shift edema. I'm not going to talk on that. So I'll probably take about 10 minutes to show you a little bit about the anatomy, and I will show you some of the really bad surgeries. Okay, don't share it, because don't go and tell people that this is how cystonostomy looks like. We've got very elegant videos, but what I'm going to show you is when you are a resident and you've got a very bad brain, how do you take a leap of faith How do you take a leap of faith underneath that frontal lobe, get into that cisterns, open the cisterns, get your CSF out, and how the brain's going to look after that. So let's start. I mean, I'm going to share. How do I share? Okay, I got it. Okay, can you see?
Yes.
Can you see?
Yeah, I can see your desktop.
Right. So, well, I'm not going into all this. Let's start off with my usual video. So it's a little frontotemporal flap removal. So that is a frontal lobe, that is a temporal lobe. The whole point of cystonostomy is taking out, I don't know why it's gone into that funny green color. Yeah. So the whole point of cystonostomy is taking out this bone as much as possible. Take out the bone. This is called the sagittal unlocking, and this helps you to get into the frontal base. So the moment you get into the frontal base, things become easy. As long as this bone is there, you're going to have to retract brain. If you're going to have to retract brain, you're not going to be doing very well. So bone removal, this is a skull-based principle. Remove it as much as possible. You don't have to remove it as I'm doing it right now. You don't have to go to the entire Kawase triangle and the Dawlings, complete Dawlings approach with clinoidectomy, all that you don't have to do. But this is the basis. This is the very basis of this cystonostomy approach. So this is called the unlocking. So let us see some more cases now. So this is a live case where that is a frontal lobe. My arrow is on the frontal lobe. That is the clinoid. This is a case of trauma. That's a clinoid. So why am I removing the clinoid? Because once I remove the clinoid, I'm right into the cisterns. So I am dissecting over the cavernous sinus so that I get some axial unlocking also. Please, if you are not familiar with this concept, we have a lot of videos on YouTube with how simple concepts like axial. See now, this is the frontal lobe, this is the temporal lobe, and you know how now extradurally, how close I am to the base. I'm so close to the base that when I open, I'm right into the suprasellar system. That's the whole point of this surgery. So that is cavernous sinus. The arrow, what you see right now, is the cavernous sinus, superior orbital fissure, and the cavernous sinus. So if there is a small breach, you can see the kind of bleeding that's happening. So this is one of the oldest videos. This is 2015. I mean, so transcavernous surgery done 4 years back. I mean, not very elegant, I agree, but definitely this is an acute subdural, and we are opening up everything so that we can get into the base right away. Now, you can see the cavernous sinus bleeding because there is a small breach. You put a Surgicel, that'll be okay. Put a small cell, there is nothing to worry about there. Put a Surgicel, wait for some time, it'll be okay. Okay, but more than this kind of mobilization is enough. Now, you see, you open the dura in this region, you take out the clinoid, and you open the dura in this region, you are right into the cisterns. So this is what I want the young neurosurgeons to figure, that you can talk about a lot of things, but at the end of the day, we are neurosurgeons. We need to look at what advances is possible. I mean, of course, we cannot buy fancy monitorings and all that in here, and of course, we cannot wait like in the West, ICU monitoring. It's not possible here. So the time that we can wait, if we have the correct indicators, that's probably something that I hope Angelo Scolias and Professor Hutchison and rest of the guys will help me to, probably help me to find out the indicators, we have indicators for cystinostomy early surgery, but this is one thing I would be very interested. So to also probably help our pre-trauma and post-surgical ICU management. This is something, we have to take the best step forward together. There's no point advocating one approach or the other. So in our cases, we have to go for an early surgery, use a microscope, and after that, open the cisterns, drain the CSF, and after that, once we drain the CSF, we're going to put in a drain, and after the drain, we are going to drain for 5 days. So the results are much better. So now we are doing an extradural clinoidectomy. This is a trauma. Not always needed to be done. Most of the time, just sphenoid-rich drilling is enough. But sometimes brain is really tight and then you want some additional space. Clinoidectomy is going to help. Again, as Tariq said, first you have to train in this. So this is all elegant surgery, but let us see some of the dural openings. All right, get ready, brace yourself. It's a very, very tight brain. So we're going to have a dural opening right now. This is again 4 years old video. A lot of people tell me that, oh, no, we don't see really tight dural opening. This is as tight as it gets. You will see this. I'll show you a few more. And I'll show you how we get into the systems. And what happens. This dural opening is in the base. It is not a C-shaped opening. It's a right in the base. And you see what happens. That's frontal lobe coming out. Just follow the orbital roof. Just follow the orbital roof. And it will take you to the optic nerve. So you see the retraction that you may have to do. But this is, you remember, if anybody knows about white matter, this is anterior to the speech area. It is not extremely elegant cortex, of course. I believe that every single neuron is elegant. But to save lives at this scenario, you will see the brain. When I open the dura further, you will see the brain. You're getting, if you know where your anatomy is, you're getting into the cistern now. Once you get into the cisterns, let out that CSF, irrigate. This is something that is very difficult for a lot of neurosurgeons. I mean, we do vascular. I mean, I'm sure you guys would have seen a lot of our vascular and skull-based videos. We never retract like this, or we never handle the brain like this in vascular. But trauma is a completely different story. Please remember that. And the results, if you do this to start with, and after that, you go ahead with all the, you can see elegant videos of cystonostomy also, once we have done this phase. This is the phase which was missing in my videos, because this is the first part where there's a tight brain. See, now you can see the optic nerve. Clearly see the optic nerve now. Can you see that, everybody? That's the optic nerve. That's the carotid.
Yes.
So that's the optic nerve, and that's the carotid. And you can see the opticocarotid window there. Okay? You remember how tight the brain was to start with. But once you see this, you see how much brain came out in the beginning. You put in, I am not using anything but a suction. I am opening the, you should know where the perforators are. My suction is almost at 0. You should never suck all the perforators. You should use the suction at this point. You should use your suction just like, and you can see the basilar artery now. You're seeing the basilar artery, and now it is 4 minutes. And in the opticocarotid window, you can see the basilar, and you just put in a drain and you just wash out the blood. So you just put in never bipolar. There is no need to bipolar. There will be a lot of bleeding. So you just need to irrigate it to stop. One of the things is the moment the ICP goes, see the brain pulsating now. You remember the brain, how it was when it started? See the pulsation now. So you keep on irrigating and this brain is much better. The results are much better. Instead of allowing half the brain to herniate out into a defect that you have created, 12 or 13 centimeter decompressive hemicraniectomy, which can be done by anybody. So again, you go into that, okay, the brain is pulsating, you have some space now, you're seeing the optic now, you're seeing the carotid. So go into this. This is as bad as it gets. This is what you are going to expect when you are doing it for the first time. So as I told you, this was the part which was missing in my videos because this is not elegant. Nobody, I mean, I started the technique, I would not be proud of this part. Okay, but this is how it starts. And I'm sure Parthiban, Wang, Roy, everybody who's masters of doing cystonostomy, now I'm bringing in my microsuction. Okay, I'm going into where the basilar is. I'm using zoom. Okay, you can see the temporal lobe is over the third nerve, herniated over the third nerve. You can always see that temporal lobe over the third nerve in this kind of severe injuries. So you are going into where the basilar is. Okay, so you see the brain damage here, and you see how much CSF after some time, how much CSF starts coming out. You see the brain damage under the patties. You can see how much the brain is damaged, and you can see that's a basilar artery coming up. Then once the basilar, you can see the basilar artery now. That is a basilar artery. Okay, it's coming up there. See all the arytenoid. Yeah, I like the music in the background. It's good. So you can see now you're putting in a drain. Number 8 feeding tube. Okay, number 8 feeding tube. You put in and see the brain. You see the extensive damage there. We are not doing any contusionectomies. We are not doing anything. Whatever contusions comes out with the retraction comes out. You see the brain, how lax. See how lax it is.
Hello?
Okay. Another opening, another dural opening. Okay, diffuse brain swelling. Okay. Here again, I am using the microscope in the initial phase just as a light source, nothing else, because it is so hectic. I know the brain is going to just leak out. This is not even a subdural. If I have a subdural, it's much better because once I really take the subdural out, the brain is lax for at least some time. But this is pure diffuse brain swelling. Okay, severe bad brain swelling. See, and after we do all that, what we did, okay, after all that, see, now this brain is pulsatile, lax, pulsatile, and it's a 2.5 to 3 centimeter opening. You just irrigate, put Surgicel, and it's nicely pulsatile, lax, very lax. Obviously, the results are going to be better. Okay, there is no doubt about it that the results are going to be better. So let us show you some cases. One of the first cases where we had done a decompressive and a cystonostomy, but the difference here, you can see the difference, the first scan versus the second scan. The difference is that the cisterns are open. Here, no cisterns. 4/15, both pupils dilated. But here, the post-op scan, you will see there will be cisterns. Brain is not really bulging out or anything. Okay, we could have put the bone flap back, and this is the guy in the ICU. Okay, this is the guy in another case. Okay, very bad brain swelling, no cisterns at all. You can see. This is after cystonostomy. Another case. After cystonostomy. Another child. Severe damage after cystonostomy. There's a cysternal catheter there. That's a discharge. gets that discharge, and that's how this child is. Another case, very, very bad brain swelling. You can see how bad this brain swelling is. So you can see this is a retraction injury. This part is retraction injury. And that's the catheter sitting there. So bone is kept back. And you see her. That's the 7th postoperative day. She still has a third nerve palsy. This kind of, well, this is one of our very severe cystonostomy patients. This is from China, where these guys, they have their ICP also monitoring, ICP monitoring also. These are cases from China. They're series. They have a lot of surgeons in China doing it right now. In the WFNS Beijing, we'll have a session on this. And no, this is not necessary. This slide is not necessary. Yeah, so I mean, we have been going to various places and we've been trying to, popularize it, new techniques. So it's very, very difficult to get any recognition. A lot of people don't even, they don't even acknowledge it. But I'm very glad and I'm very happy that Professor Peter Hutchison, David Clark, and all these people, Angelos, everybody has been really helpful. Franco has been also very helpful. Tariq, everybody has been supportive. So I'm very glad, and I'm sure that it will be a new era where the young neurosurgeons will introduce microsurgery into trauma, and that will change a lot of things. So really proud of, this is the part where cystonostomy has been mentioned in Genos. So very proud and very glad, and I hope it is a harbinger of change. Let us see. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So do we have any questions or comments from the panel?
Yes.
Professor Tariq, would you like to?
Yes.
Yes, Professor. Just give me a moment to know. Yeah, yes. Professor Tariq, yes, please.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Excellent. Very glad you showed the difficult parts as well. I have never been against cystonostomy, or I don't want to compare or compete between decompressive craniotomies or cystonostomies. I feel maybe there's a place for everything, whatever helps the patient. That is the most important thing. All my time, what I've been trying to say is that, which you mentioned, thank you very much, that the microsurgical techniques are the first and foremost thing which our young neurosurgeons should learn before they jump into doing this very difficult and later on looking very elegant surgery. And very impressive what you showed, coming down and looking down into the bezier and everything, an excellent way to do everything. Again, as I said, every avenue should be looked at and should be explored to try and save, because most of them are young patients. They're young people, to try and save them in any way which is possible, whether it is just ICP monitoring, ventilation, it is decompressive craniotomy, or it is cystonostomy, anything which is going to be exploratory burrholes. When I came back to Pakistan in 1990, we had no CT scan. We should do exploratory burrholes and then do a craniotomy, not a craniotomy, to try and save anybody, or doing a tracheostomy. All these things. And I think you are putting it in the right perspective, not making it a surgery for trainees. It is a surgery to be done by senior people, and trainees have to learn how it is done by senior people in the middle of the night at 4 a.m. or 2 a.m. Thank you, Aip.
Very much. Thank you very much, Tariq. You have put it in the right. For me, I had been a bit aggressive over the years. I have been a bit aggressive pushing it, but I understand that everybody wants the best of the patient. It is all different perspectives. Every perspective is right. It is not that somebody doing compressive hemicraniectomy has a bad intention for his patient. No, it's not right. I agree. I completely agree. So my perspective need not be right. I understand. Always my perspective need not be right. And there are sometimes when I get corrected by people, I understand that sometimes initially I used to think cystinostomy will help in everything. No, it doesn't. There are some indications, there are some contraindications. The initial part, now it is only now that I'm comfortable showing the first parts of that surgery. It is very non-elegant. It is very difficult and it is a really terrible part. But after that, the surgery completely turns elegant. It turns into microsurgery, as Tariq has beautifully put it. I mean, as he said, everything has a place. And senior, it is not that one first-year resident doing decompressive hemicraniectomy today can tomorrow do cystinostomy. It's not possible. And when anybody tells me that, let us start cystinostomy, it is not easy. So you have to catch your aneurysm surgeon. You have to go take him to the theater, make sure that that fellow comes with you to the theater, open a few cisterns first time, and maybe first start it off with decompressive hemicraniectomy. Don't start off cystinostomy as such. Start with acute subdurals. And when you are doing acute subdurals, when you take out the acute subdurals, you will get some space. Then open the cisterns and see how it is. Instead of trying very bad cases in the beginning and then getting an impression that it can never be done. So instead of that, start with acute subdurals, open the cisterns, see that most probably you don't need to take the bone flap off, and slowly develop it. That is what Wang, Parthiban, Roy, all of them did that. And now they have huge series and they believe in it. And I'm sure things will change slowly, and it is already changing. And, but the whole point is we all want the best for our patient. Everybody. I mean, not a single neurosurgeon would think something inferior for his patient, I'm sure. Because, 10 years of practice teaches you that. Before that, you think rest of the guys are not bothered. No, it's not so. Every single neurosurgeon is really bothered. So they are worried. But their perspectives change. So, for example, Tariq's fear of that a neurosurgeon, a young neurosurgeon starting his case in cystinostomy, he will do more damage than actually what is a decompressive hemicraniectomy. With a decompressive hemicraniectomy, he will not do much damage, but with cystinostomy, he can really kill the patient. So these are things to be considered. We have to balance everything together. At the end of the day, we'll have to train and we'll have to decide for us what is best. Thank you very much.
Very true.
It's Hutchie. Thank you, everybody, for the talks. I need to go, but they were very nice videos. And please, thank you, everybody, for supporting GENOS. And let's get more data and move forward, helping patients from that pre-hospital emergency department, neurosurgery, the whole spectrum. So I've left my email address if anybody wants to contact me. Thanks, Tariq. Thank you, Franco. Thank you, John. Thank you, Hera, for
thank you so much
for organising that.
Question?
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it. So anybody wants to, then please email me. All right, take care.
I've said.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. I've shared your email address.
Yeah.
Thank you
Bye,
so
Sharon,
much.
too. Bye.
Thanks. Okay, so we have one question from Dr. Kabulo for Professor Cherian. Yes, Dr. Kabulo, please.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Hype, for that excellent presentation. I was reading your paper in Prof. Kalangu's book, where you were mentioning that if you have a surface hematoma, sometimes you ask the anesthetist to do a salva maneuver so you evacuate that hematoma. Yeah. Then I mean you meant an intracerebral bleed. You can evacuate like that. So what about if there is a huge subdural, acute subdural? What do you do? Are you also opening like we do the hemicraniectomy, you evacuate first the acute subdural. Maybe I missed that part. You evacuate the acute subdural hematoma, then you do the cystinostomy. That was my question. Then the second one, are you also thinking of doing it now endoscopically in the future, the cystinostomy? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, so Kabulo, first question, answer, acute subdurals are the best cases for starting cystinostomy. These are really tight brains. You go into the base of the brain and you open a wide durotomy instead of opening a small basal opening. You can open a large dural opening and the subdural comes out and you have about 1 minute time to get into the system. So the brain, as soon as you take out the acute subdural, the brain is lax. And only after that, the brain is going to swell. In 1 minute, after 1 minute, all of us know that. You take out the subdural and you wait for 5 minutes, the brain will start swelling. So we have all seen that. So till that time, till the time that the brain is going to swell, you take out the acute subdural, go into the frontal base, start opening system. This is the best and the most elegant way of starting your cystinostomy. Again, put a large flap. Don't ever think that you don't, I mean, there were times when we used a smaller flap. Always take a large, like a decompressive hemicraniectomy flap. The brain is lax, put the flap back as a floating flap. No harm done. But if the brain is not lax, if you are not convinced even 1% that the brain is not lax, keep the bone flap out. So there is no problem. You don't have to convince anybody. It is the patient's best that you want. So after you take out all the, all the hematoma, after you evacuate everything, open all the cisterns, the brain is going to be really lax in the subdural. And after that is done, you keep the bone flap back. The only exception is the sinus bleed. If there is a sinus bleed, you've got to locate it and stop the sinus bleed by putting Surgicel, packing Surgicel from where the bleed is coming from. This is very important.
We have
Thank you. Second
question.
Yeah, we have a question from Dr. David Clark. Yes, please go ahead.
Oh, so thank you very much for your talk, Dr. Cherian. I just wanted to ask, I think someone's asked it on the chat as well. If you are a neurosurgical resident and you want to learn how to do cystinostomy, what's the best way? Would you just recommend doing a vascular and skull-based fellowship? And then once you've done that, how do you take it forward from that? That's my question.
Come here, David. Come to us. You will have both skull-based and vascular fellowship, as well as you will see a lot of cystinostomy. We have a skull-based and vascular fellowship from ACNS. So that is for people who have completed their neurosurgery. So we have a 6-month. We have right now, not Oleg, who is sleeping here, but Gracian from Zimbabwe. We have had everybody from all over coming for skull base. So we do the Dolans and the lateral skull base and the endoscopic skull base. So you could have a fellowship here. You do a lot of vascular cases also. So you could come and do this fellowship with us. And in the meanwhile, you can scrub with us for cystinostomies. We can get you a license for in Nepal. So scrub in for cystinostomies with my consultants, and then you will see what is the change.
Thank you.
Hi, Hero, go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead, Manuel.
Yes, Manuel.
Yes, I have a question. Hello, Professor Cherian. My question is about cystinotomy. It's about trauma. The trauma in the cavernosus sinus.
Trauma in cavernous sinus.
Yes, I don't find nothing about that. No classification, no nothing.
I understand. See, it is something very, very rare. It is something that I don't have much experience with. I have had one case where I had a trauma. I had a ruptured, probably a ruptured carotid in the cavernous sinus. We were very lucky that we were able to put some muscle and stop the bleeding. But other than that, we have done so much trauma, but we've never had any experience with cavernous sinus trauma. So maybe it is there and we didn't realize that it is there. We've had a few cases of traumatic CCF, but obviously these cases had cavernous sinus trauma, but I really don't have much experience with respect to cavernous sinus trauma, as I told you.
Yes, but I was thinking maybe we can search or make a meta-analysis. I don't know, we can get something about that, because there is a few cases in different places. In Dominicana, I was searching and nobody, because it's like, if you have it, you're already dead. Because in some countries, they say people just trying to help, they say, oh, he has something in the eyes, let me get it out. And that's the problem. That's the main problem is if you put it out, because maybe that is making hemostasis. But I think if you have one case, you remember what I showed you, maybe we can search different cases and do something.
We do intracavernous surgery. We do many times. We do intracavernous surgery. We get into Parkinson's triangle, and then we sometimes will have to take off the meningohypophyseal trunk with supplying a fistula or. Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I can show you. I mean, I have on big videos on YouTube on Neurosurgical TV itself how we do intracavernous surgery and how we expose cavernous sinus. It's part of skull-based work. So, but it is not, I mean, cavernous sinus injury is not a big deal actually. It is only when the cavernous carotid is injured, it becomes a big deal. So, I mean, otherwise the cavernous sinus injury is per se not a big deal. So, only when you have a cavernous carotid injury or a cavernous carotid fistula, caroticocavernous fistula, then it's a big deal. So, then all the pressures change, the venous pressures change, and you have your pulsating X of thalamus, and going into cavernous sinus like that, it is not easy. Okay? Unless you have proximal control or probably even tie off, trap, or even bypass. So it's not easy. Interventionists are much better off doing that kind of stuff, not us. So yes, there were crazy days when we used to go and do this, and I don't mind doing this. But when we have better options, maybe we should opt for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question, Hira.
Yes, John.
Yeah, we have a question from by the way, before I got involved with you, I didn't realize you're trying to change the standard of care in a major specialty. But it's been a pleasure, and we'll continue to work with you. We have a question from an Ecuadorian neurosurgeon, Joffrey Portillo. He says, how many days do you use the catheter in the cistern?
How many?
Joffrey Portillo, a neurosurgeon from Ecuador, asks, how many days do you use a catheter in the cistern?
5 days. 5 days.
5 days, okay.
Okay. Dr. Bankole, you had a question?
Yes.
Yes, please. Go
I
ahead.
want to thank Professor Lipe Sherian and about his presentation. And I think that what Emmanuel want to say is maybe sometimes after traumatic, we have sinus cavernous syndrome, and who call that maybe fistula of sinus cavernous post-traumatic. And sometimes in my department we have like 3 cases, and we perform endoscopic, endovascular management with good outcome. So it's not easy to go to done surgery about sinus cavernous injury post-traumatic. Sometimes it is fistule, and we perform endovascular treatment. And I'm really happy to be here today. Big and brilliant presentation that is clear. We have to know that now when we have severe injury, brain post-traumatic, we have to think about a good management. And I hope we will go now in our area to perform hemicraniectomy decompressive with cysternostomy. And I have conviction that there will be great benefit about our patients. And I'm so glad to be here with Lipe Shirian, and because I know that in few months I will be with them in Nepal. So I'm really excited about this new experience who will come so soon. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, John, for all you've done to Neurosurgical TV. And you need to be, I don't know, one medal. You have to done your decoration.
No time soon, I hope.
Thank you. Okay.
So thank you, Ihira, to make effort, to all your effort to make. Thank you, Ihira, and thank you all.
Thank you so much. So
I have one question, please.
Yes, please. Just a quick one. We have to. Yes, please.
Like with the cysternostomy, we don't have a microscope here in Malawi, and I had when during my residency training, I had lots of exposure with doing sphenoid meningiomas, and I was quite exposed to doing cysternostomies in elective cases. But can we do it without the microscope, or can we only do it with using operating just loops like 2.5 magnification? And the NG tube number 8, are we going to place it like in between the optic nerve and the carotid artery, or should we push it a bit down to the basilar artery so that the CSF can have a good output within the 5 days it stays in that place? This is a question for Professor Cherian.
Right. First question, do you have a car and a house?
Like, I'm not having that in this hospital. I'm just helping out for a few months.
No, but if you have a car and a house, sell that and buy a microscope. That is my advice to you. Okay? If you have a place to, if you have a car and a house, sell that. If you have anything in your hand, sell that, buy a microscope. A young neurosurgeon should have that passion. Neurosurgery is not a side business. So be passionate. I'm very happy that you asked me that question. If I was in your place, I will sell everything that I may do another work. If I didn't have that kind of money, I would do something else. I'll buy a microscope, because without a microscope, there is no microneurosurgery. Without no microneurosurgery, there is no future. Okay? Please remember, if you want to be a microneurosurgeon, and whether you are in Nepal, whether you are in United States, microneurosurgery is microneurosurgery. You will have the same kind of skills as anybody, any best guy in the world, if you practice from this age onwards. But if when you get your money and when you get everything, and 10 years, 15 years later, your time for practice and your skills, everything is different. So right now, sell everything you have, get your microscope, start your surgery. This is my answer. Okay?
All right, so we move on to our last presenter. Thank you so much, Professor Cherian. Our last presenter for today is Dr. Raja Krishna.
Yeah, I beg leave. I have to. So thank you very much for everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Everybody, I hope you can listen. Hello? Can you
Hello?
see?
Yeah. So he's the associate professor in Government Medical College, Kerala, India. And he'll be talking about the guide to enrollment in India and the challenges faced by his center.
Yeah, hello everybody. Thank you very much, Dr. Cherian, for inviting me to talk about this. Thank you, Dr. David Clark, for giving me the statistics of the current update. So it's already pretty late. It's 12 here in Japan. I'm with Professor Kato, whom Professor Sarvade described as a mother of global neurosurgery. So it's right now. So I'll just take you through a practical guide to enrollment in India. That's Hira asked the question earlier that whether all the difficulties she faced during organizing this in Nepal. So this is the same here as well in India also, but I went through all these difficulties and realized, so I thought I should talk about it and there are many people who are ready to take this plunge of joining the study, but they just don't know. So I thought I would guide them. So this is my team with the most hardworking team under the leadership of Professor Anil Pitambran and Dr. Raj Mohan. So having the GNOS has been extended to October 2019, as we all know. So Professor Savadai on this, just before 1 year, he had given this talk and presented this slide. He also did present this slide again in this talk, but I think this is the mother of all slides regarding global neurosurgery. Just look at the publications from the developed world and undeveloped world, but the trauma actually lies on the right side of this graph. Also, India futures, although we are there, but we are still not there. It's in the top publication of the among the world. So where does the trauma actually lie? They lie in the developing countries, as we all know. And Asia has tops the list for motor vehicular accidents. And just see, this Southeast Asia is a part where there is largest incidence of road traffic accidents. So why don't we do research? This is a Dutch study which shows that as we go higher up the ladder in the hierarchy, we lose the impetus of doing research. So this is from the last 5 years. This was published in 2015 in Neurology India. You see the number of publications in the last 5 years tops. NIMHANS tops it's in the government sector, and Sri Satya Sai in the private sector 13 and 93. So why don't we do research? First thing is I don't have time. Well, that's always an excuse. And second one is I'm not interested, better off with clinical work. We can't do anything about it. And the last thing is I don't know how to do it because I was not thought about it. Well, this is the target population whom I intend, because there are so many friends who have come up to me and asked that I just don't know how to do it. So I thought I would guide them. These are the statistics of government medical college in Tirunelveli where I work. And just look at the number of operations we perform and the publications in last 5 years. We are nowhere. We are there, but yet we are not there. So the GNOS is a perfect opportunity for everybody in India to represent the actual figures of a head injury worldwide. So GNOS so far, these statistics were given by Dr. David Clark himself. Before 2 days, and he shared with me on WhatsApp. The centers from India 0, despite being we were the head injury capital of the world, not so far behind. This was in 2003. The Times of India paper reported it. Why this is? This is because the biggest hurdle is the Health Minister Screening Committee. I'll just take you through how to get past this hurdle. So in India, Health Minister Screening Committee is required for all foreign assistance and collaboration of medical research. And it's a high-level committee constituted by Government of India, which meets every 3 months. So these are the ICMR guidelines which say how to apply for the HMSC. In a nutshell, I will show you in a figure that if you're a high-volume center, you can directly approach the ICMR. Or if you are in another way is that you can send your ethical committee clearances to a coordinator who would in turn apply it to the ICMR for you. If you click on this site, this is the ICMR website, which will directly lead to the registration. First, you have to register your name here, and you'll get a username and password. Then you will see this part on the same page below. These are the documents required for this study, and you see the last one, document required for HMSC consideration. So there are 10 documents required, but when you see this, the number of things you required, you will always say, no way, I'm not doing this. But just you also have a lot of phomophobia, that is intense discomfort that is experienced in filling out data on a pre-designed template. So I'm someone who suffers from one of the extreme forms of this condition. But when you look back, just chill. Half of the things which are here are not required at all. Like we do not transfer any material to different countries, so this is not required. As well as the last 5 to 10 is not required. So all you got to do is a research protocol. That is a research proposal that you already have on the GNOS website, and you have the ICMR summary sheet that you get from clicking here. And the fourth one is the institutional ethics committee that you get from your own institution. So this is the protocol. You just click here and you can go directly to the GNOS web page where you can download. After you download that, you have to get a covering letter from your head of institution, and also you get a consent form, which I'll tell you from where to get. You approach your ethics committee and institutional review board, wherever it is, and you don't have to alter the protocol. International protocols have to be accepted as they are, and you don't have to make any changes in that. Now after that, what you do is you after you getting the clearance from your institution, you go to download the ICMR summary sheet. I'll let you know what is it, and then with that you apply for the HMSC clearance, and that's it. So if you click on this link here, you will directly go to the informed consent template page of the WHO website, and this is the one that you need to download. Just click on, and you'll get a pre-written template of consent, like introduction of the study and everything. You have to translate it into your native language as well as English, and this along with the covering letter and the protocol of the GNOS, you have to submit it to your ethics committee. This is the ICMR summary sheet I was talking about. It is a questionnaire of 29, number of 29 questions are asked, and this is very simple. You just have to go through title of the project, Indian institutions. I just put on 2 pages that you got to fill it, and there are 2 more pages which I have not shown here. And there you are. Once you submit it and you go to this page, and you can check your status after you view fellowship and HMSC, and this is what you get, and it will show in process. So currently this is the status of our application. We did get a call from the HMSC last Monday when they met. So I would request everyone who is in India that this is a golden opportunity. Let's not miss the bus yet, as now the HMSC will again meet in 3 months, that is August, and you have 2 more months to complete this study. So any help regarding this in India, I am more than willing to help, though I'm not holding any official position in the GNOS study, but I feel that this is very important. This is to truly represent the actual numbers in which this study is to be based. So thank you very much for inviting, and thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's really helpful the way you've guided, because honestly, it's a bit of a problem for countries like Pakistan and India to get approval from institutional boards and go ahead with performing research. Even if you're willing to, then you have so many hurdles already.
Yeah,
so yeah, thank you so much for highlighting this.
Welcome.
And Dr. David, would you just put a small comment on this, and then we'll just wind up?
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Raja. I really appreciate that. Like I was saying earlier, it's quite difficult to get HMSC approval, so I appreciate you spending the time. And yeah, really hope that a lot of centers from India participate, because as you say, it's one of the biggest burdens of TBI.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I think that's all for today. Thank you so much, Dr. Raja. Thanks to Professor Yoko Kato for recommending.
Yeah,
thank you. So thank you all. John, I think we're done with it today. Thank you everyone for coming up, and all the presenters, speakers, panelists, everyone, thank you so much.
Thank you, Hira.
Thank you. Bye-bye.